Hello again, welcome back to our Health and Science Focus. Now, living with an autoimmune condition can be caused by and might lead to stress and depression. You need a positive outlook to fight this condition. To discuss the importance of all of this is counselling psychologist Gordon Shaw. Let's get some advice from him. Gordon, a very good morning, and thanks so much for your time this morning. So the experts have been telling us throughout the morning that stress plays a big part in dealing with and living with autoimmune conditions. I'm not sure how many of your patients might be sufferers or people living with autoimmune conditions. So give us some insight into what it is you know about the psychological effects of living with something like this.
Well, Yuveka, I think that this is a perfect topic that many people can relate to because, right now many people are stressed. And of course, there's the positive aspects of stress that drive us and motivate us and continue to make us, kind of keep going. But then there's the negative side effects of stress. And as we can see with autoimmune disease, specifically, we can see how severe stress can actually play in terms of its role on our immune system. And so, common aspects around depression and anger are so common because, if you had a particular form of functionality before, it can fall out of the window if you have rheumatoid arthritis or multiple sclerosis, as has been mentioned in conversation today. And so, the adjustment to a new way of living is incredibly hard and challenging, and with that can come a lot of psychological distress.
So, just give us some insight, if you can, if this is within your ambit, as to why it is that things like stress, things like depression might lead to an autoimmune condition. What is happening to us, to our body, to our hormones and all of that? If just a quick explainer, Gordon.
Well, of course I can't speak to the medical side of this, but research suggests that 80% of people who end up becoming diagnosed with an autoimmune disease condition have a prerequisite for stress. And of course, understanding the link between how important stress can be and how it impacts our emotional, psychological, and physical health is hugely important. But from a psychological perspective, many people struggle to even articulate how they feel in relation to certain things, and of course this can often manifest in unique ways on our body.
So how do we sort of deal or lighten our stress, try not to be, try to deal with depression, because this can be a bit of a vicious cycle. You're stressed, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're burnt out, you end up with an autoimmune condition. That in itself causes you to be stressed. If you listen to all the symptoms and what happens to your body, I spoke about how fatigued I was. I spoke about how moody I was for months and months, not knowing what was going on. How do you break that cycle?
So I think, fatigue across the spectrum of autoimmune diseases and other chronic illnesses certainly is the most disenabling effect because, a person values their independence, their autonomy, and their ability to kind of go about their day in a way that they have control over. And now this is somewhat taken away. And so, it's very easy to fall into a kind of vicious downward spiral of depression, anger, and anxiety, and even a sense of worthlessness. If you were a sportsman in your youth and now you're experiencing arthritis in your later adulthood, this can be hugely detrimental, from a psychological perspective. But, some common themes that we find, in a therapy space is that many people, choose to try and hide their pain because it's chronic in nature, and they don't want their loved ones to see them in pain. That's one aspect of it, the physical aspect, and then of course there's the more emotional aspect, which is really trying to get in touch with understanding what is causing these individuals stress in their lives, how it can be removed. As the doctors have mentioned, something as simple as eating healthily can really just kind of reduce the intake from a physical perspective of, carcinogenic and genetically modified kind of food material. But, from a psychosocial perspective, what kind of support system does the person have? Do they have help and assistance when they do feel fatigued, or are they the breadwinner and are forced to work in an environment that's, quite difficult, where it's 8 to 5 and there's an unrelenting nature of kind of work constantly flowing in and out of the office? So, the conversation as a whole has to be understood in a more holistic perspective, beyond just, tackling the psychological aspects, because this will undoubtedly ripple into every aspect of the person's life and affect their quality of life.
How does someone like you help someone like me come to terms, of all the things that you've mentioned, come to terms with that your life has changed from this point? It's not going to be exactly as it was from just before you heard this diagnosis. A lot of stuff has to change. So how do you help them come to terms with that? And what do people battle with most? Like you say, a sportsman might battle with the physical aspect. What do you see in your experience as well, Gordon?
So I think, of course, everyone responds differently to illness and any form of change. But something like this, which is pronounced and prolonged in nature, can of course have some really devastating effects and devastating effects from a psychological point of view. And often we kind of term this the existential realm of existence. So, questions around what is my purpose on this earth? Why me, for instance? Why do I have to have this illness? Often are some really automatic thoughts that come into people's mind, which naturally lead to a sense of, distress and even despair. So, moving an individual with a chronic condition into a space where they can have a meaningful life despite their ailment, that they can receive the support and care that they need, and that they can still live a fulfilling life, is often the crucial and foundational step to moving, moving beyond and into a realm where they can adjust and transition to live more meaningfully. But of course, there's some more practical aspects that we've already referred to, such as breathing techniques, mindfulness, being able to come to terms with, what is the individual actually feeling, and perhaps also understand why they're holding back from allowing family members to help them or assist them, because a large part of this is the feeling or the lack thereof of control and being able to kind of exercise your own volition with certain activities.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned family, because often, and I'm not saying this happens with every autoimmune condition, some are mild compared to others, but often you find that this is going to affect an entire family, because especially if somebody can't function the way they used to before this, as things progress or deteriorate.
Yes, definitely. And I think, just a simple tool that we can apply in all of our lives is just to listen. People that are struggling with a particular ailment or a particular feeling often just need a space to talk. And through that process, of course, you may not be experiencing what that person is feeling, but you certainly may be able to assist them in a way that reduces that load. So a single mom who has rheumatoid arthritis and has to go into work every day could possibly benefit from your support, fetching and carrying their daughter, for instance. So some practical tasks like that, can really be beneficial. Of course, it's not going to remove the rheumatoid arthritis, but it certainly does make living a little bit easier, and that sense of social support is so crucial to live that meaningful and purposeful life that I've mentioned before.
Now, we had the discussion with the medical experts, Gordon, about, you heard from the rheumatologist talking about how certain race groups have certain specific things that affect them in certain ways. From your side, I'd like to know, when it comes to personality types, and you deal, I'm sure, with a lot of personality types, are you seeing a link between autoimmune conditions and personality types? Those who like to control certain things, others maybe who are, who are more stressed than others. Do you see any type of link there in your practice?
Yes, definitely. I think, kind of keeping in line with the theme of a workaholic, people who tend to prioritize and really invest all their time and energy into their work often do neglect their mental health, mental and physical health for that matter. And then, of course, they may go many years having, chronic pain, whether it's back pain, or something more severe, whether it's multiple sclerosis, for instance, or even psoriasis. And, they won't necessarily reach out for help because, this is normal. There can be nothing wrong with me. And of course, that's far from the truth. There can be something wrong. But once again, there's still so much stigma around mental health that, you know, people tend to kind of deflect and avoid from making it a priority in their own lives. And yet at the same time, it as we can see here, it does have some severe consequences on your physical health and you know, that moving forward in terms of your later adulthood.
All right, Gordon Shaw, thank you so much for that. The psychology of living with an autoimmune disease or an autoimmune condition. Yeah, that's you've got to watch out and get the help that you need. It's something that can affect more than just the sufferer. It can affect an entire family and the people around you. Coming up, we're going to talk about nutrition. It's very important in fighting or living with autoimmune conditions. Somebody who's helped me on my very difficult journey, Mayuri Bowen, is here to chat to us about how and the things that we can do and how we can make those changes that are so vital.